Hello everyone, my name is Nilanjan Chatterjee and today we are going to talk about Farrukhsiyar's Farman, the Magna Carta of British Imperialism in Bengal. As we can see in the first slide of our discussion, the Farman of 1717 issued by the Mughal Emperor Farrukhsiyar is often treated as the Magna Carta of British trade in Bengal as well as India. Now, this particular incident has some specific reasons and some specific historical significance. We are going to discuss those important factors in this video. So, before we get into the detail, we should discuss the background, the historical background of the Farman that took place in 1717. So let's come to the next slide. So one of the important factors to note is the decline of the Mughal Empire and the rise of the East India Company. So the first point is the decline of the Mughal Empire. As we all know that in 18th century, the Mughal Empire was facing a gradual collapse or a gradual decline. After the demise of Aurangzeb, the later Mughal rulers, for example, Bahadur Shah, Jahandar Shah, and including Farrukhsiyar, they could not handle, they could not administer the entire Mughal Empire that with that much vigor, with that much prosperity. As a result of which, in 18th century, the Mughal Empire kind of collapsed. We have a separate video on this you can watch. I have discussed the reasons behind the decline of the Mughal Empire. So the decline of the Mughal Empire was one of the key features of early 18th century that we have to understand while studying the Farman of Farrukhsiyar. The next point is the rise of English East India Company, that is the EIC. The English East India Company, which was established in 17th century, in 1600, gradually developed as a very important trading organization of Western Europe, and they looked forward to making colonies all across the world. These colonies primarily were markets. They wanted to basically make markets for their own revenue. And they had support, complete support from the British government so that they could pursue with their colonialist venture. Next point is the competition for dominance. Now, just like English East India Company, there were other companies like the Dutch East India Company, the Portuguese East India Company, the French East India Company. So these trading organizations were conflicting, but constantly in conflict with each other as to who is going to get the absolute control over the economy of their colonized lands like Asia, like India. So they were targeting India as a zone of resource and power, as to which particular trading organization can dominate that zone of power and resource. So this was another peculiarity of 18th century, early 18th century, which we have to understand to analyze the Farman of 1707. Now, before coming to the demands and the details of Farman, we should discuss what was the Farman and what happened exactly. So, in 1707, when Nawab Farrukhsiyar was very unwell, one of the officials of the British East India Company, the English East India Company, Sir William Hamilton, he offered some medicinal help to the Nawab. Okay, So after getting treated by the medicinal help given by William Hamilton, Farrukhsiyar was extremely satisfied. So in return, he wanted to give something to the English East India Company. Now, what did they require? What did they demand? The English East India Company demanded some specific things in return of the medicinal help that they provided to Farrukhsiyar. First of all, they demanded duty-free trade. Okay, they demanded duty-free trade, particularly in the regions of Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa. Okay, and they wanted exemption from custom duties on goods traded in these three regions. Why? Because they knew that the most fertile and the most resourceful areas of South Asia and India were Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa, where they could get good amount of raw material and all the natural benefits. Now, coming to the next point, they also demanded zamindari rights. Okay, they also demanded zamindari rights and control over 38 villages near Calcutta or Bengal. Why did they require zamindari rights? Because they were actually looking for landed economy that would provide them some economic security to build a strong empire. So English East India Company was moving towards an imperialist strategy. That means a strategy towards creating an empire, and they started with these small economic demands which would gradually lead them to political success. Economic demand which will gradually lead them to political success. Great. So the third point that the third demand that they put forward was minting rights. They they asked for the right to mint coins in Murshidabad. Murshidabad is located in Bengal, which would give the East India Company further economic leverage, as I was saying while discussing the previous slide. Now, coming to the next slide, there was an interesting thing that took place. There was a delay in securing the Farman. Okay, what caused the delay in securing the Farman? So, point number one is the political instability. So, in the Mughal court, there was a political instability, particularly in terms of nobility. Okay, so there was a very influential noble, or there were a couple of influential nobles like the Syed brothers, okay, who delayed the issuance of the Farman. Okay, and the second point is the diplomatic pressure. As we can see, these are two extremely important names. The British representatives in India, including John Farman and Dr. William Hamilton, as we discussed before, had to navigate the complex dynamics of the Mughal court. Since they were new to this place, they had to take time to understand the royal courtly culture of the Mughal Empire. And they took time to understand the language, not just the verbal language, the political language of the Mughal Empire, so that they could communicate well. Now, the third point is Farrukhsiyar's reliance. Farrukhsiyar, who was, as I already mentioned, a relatively weak emperor, was heavily reliant on the external supports to maintain his throne. So the Syed brothers, they were there to help and manipulate Farrukhsiyar's decision. Since they took time to take the decision of supporting the English East India Company, after the Syed brothers gave Farrukhsiyar a green signal, Farrukhsiyar approved the issuance of the Farman. So coming to the next point, the provisions of the Farman. We already have discussed the main provisions of the Farman. One, exemption from custom duties, Bengal, Bihar, Orissa. Point number two, control over 38 villages near Calcutta and minting rights in Murshidabad. Now, this Farman, since it took place in 1717, Bengal had its own political authority, and that the name of that political authority was, as we can see, Murshid Kuli Khan, being the Naib Subadar of Bengal. Murshid Kuli Khan did not approve or allow the advent of East India Company in the trading activities of Bengal. He found it a little bit threatening to the integrity of economic activities in Bengal. Okay, and he directly opposed the advent of English East India Company in the trading activities of Bengal. But since the Farman was already given by Farrukhsiyar, the Mughal Emperor, his opposition did not have that much value. Although we can understand Murshid Kuli Khan's character from this opposition as students of history. Now we come to the historiographical perspectives as to how different historians have addressed this topic in different ways. Okay, this issuance of Farrukhsiyar's Farman. Like historians like Irfan Habib and Sukumar Bhattacharya, they have emphasized the economic ramifications of the Farman. They argue that while the privileges granted to the EIC, East India Company, boosted its trade, they also resulted in significant financial strain on the Mughal Empire. So on one hand, it is going to be beneficial for the East India Company. On the other hand, it will drain the wealth from the Mughal treasury. As we can see in the next point, the Peshkash, which was the annual tribute given to the EIC, to the East Indian Company, it remained stagnant. So, on one hand, the East India Company is making money out of the trading activities that they are doing in India. On the other hand, they are constantly receiving Peshkash, which is royal gifts from the king. So, both ways, it is basically gradually devastating India's economy, okay, the economy of the Mughal Empire. On the other hand, if we look at N.K. Sinha and Percival Spear's work, both these historians have claimed that this Farman actually indicated a diplomatic success of English East India Company. Why? Because they skillfully managed or exploited the weakness, the intrinsic weakness of the Mughal Empire, and they took an advantage of that situation. And Percival Spear, that is why, directly claimed that this Farman of 1717 is the Magna Carta of British imperialism in India. Okay, and actually, it both these theories claim that it benefited to both parties. Although we as student of history, we can say that it was ultimately a financial loss for the Mughal Empire. Now, as we can see, the long-term impact and legacy of the Farman of Farrukhsiyar of 1717, it strengthened the position, the political and economic position of English East India Company in India. It also created a foundation for British dominance in South Asia, and it reshaped India's future. Okay. On the other hand, it sowed seeds of conflict. It weakened the Mughal authority. As we already know that since the Mughal ruler was extremely dependent on external forces, the Britishers could actually manipulate the Mughal authority very easily because of their incapacity, okay, because of the incapacity of the Mughal rulers. And culmination in the Battle of Plassey. This is a very important point. Why? Because in 1757, the Battle of Plassey took place. And in the Battle of Plassey, it was almost decided that the Britishers actually are looking for making a colony. Okay? And it also, this Farman of 1717 actually created a bedrock for the Battle of Plassey that was fought in 1757 between the English East India Company under the leadership of Robert Clive and the Nawab of Bengal, Siraj-ud-Daulah. Okay? The economic and political clashes that took place in 1757 was basically a result of the Farman of 1717 as discussed by many historians. So the Farman significance we are repeating. It indicated the decline of the Mughals. It also indicated a gradual emergence of the English East India Company in South Asia, not just in Bengal. And it also indicated, and I would say exposed, the internal fragility of Indian society. Okay, the mismatches that were there amongst Indians, the conflicts that were there between different nobles of the Mughal court. It exposed all these things. Okay, so we have come to the concluding part. As we can see, Farrukhsiyar's Farman of 1717 was a pivotal event in the history of British imperialism in India, because it created the bedrock for imperialism in India. Okay, English East India Company came as a trading organization, and through Farmans like Farrukhsiyar's Farman of 1717, they gradually gained political control over South Asia by assuring land rights, by assuring trading rights over certain areas. Okay, so we have come to the end of this video. Please share your thoughts regarding the video and stay in touch. Thank you very much.